Hey, and welcome to the podcast where talent trends get stripped of the fluff and we spotlight the strategies that actually work. I'm your host, Kate Ball, founder of Sparkle and Sass Consulting, author of the Culture Chronicles, and resident sparkle slinger for companies who are tired of lip service and ready for results. Today's episode is personal because if I had $1 for every time someone asked me to just run a quick leadership workshop, I could retire tomorrow with a yacht named Context Matters. We're calling time on one and done. Training and deep diving into what really builds leadership capability across an organization. No buzzwords, no silver bullets, just practical, scalable strategy and a little tough love. So joining me today is powerhouse Victoria Feldman, someone who knows that leadership isn't taught in a day, it's shaped over time. Together, we'll explore why so many development programs fall flat and how org design can break or change your desires, move from inspiration to implementation. But it's not just about fixing L&D. It's about redesigning the system so leadership can thrive. So grab a drink, drop the ego, and let's get into it. Welcome, Victoria.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to dive into this conversation today with you. But first, before we do you mind just telling our audience a little bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. So I'm Victoria Feldman. I have 15 years of experience in employee development. I speak about it. I'm advising startups in the AI and learning space, and I'm a certified executive coach. I worked at companies like Amazon, Meta, PayPal, and Visa on enhancing employee development and coaching executives and managers to be better leaders and communicate better. I also have a multicultural background. I lived in 5 countries and I speak 5 languages. So I coach people around the world. And now I have my own consulting firm that specializes in creating unique learning experiences for different companies and employees to help them thrive in their workplace. And I speak about emotional intelligence, leadership development, and career development.
Awesome. So today, obviously, we're going to be talking about leadership programs in particular. And this is an area that's very near and dear to me because as a consultant, I'm sure you've seen the same thing. A lot of times I will have companies coming to me saying, hey, we need to fix something. We don't know what's broken, how it got broken or why, but we need you to come in and fix it. And when I start to pick through the challenges they're facing, more often than not, it's a leadership failure. It's something that's come from the top down and just perpetuated over time. It's continued to grow and become a problem. So from your perspective, what does a good leader actually look like in today's world? And why, in your opinion, do so many fall short?
That's a very deep question. Can I start with a personal story?
Sure.
Early, what made me want to become a leadership development coach or program manager and work in learning and development for the first place is that my first job, I was right out of university. I was hired in a big management consulting firm. And I was one of those who had a bad manager, somebody that didn't provide feedback, wrote a thank you letter, but forgot to put me inside the letter. I only got feedback from her once and during the performance review. I used to come back home and being so sad and depressed and I realized 3 things. So the first thing is what huge impact leaders have on our personal life, that they can impact our mood and our well-being. The second thing I realize is that leaders very often get promoted to become leaders because they were good at their job. But leading people and being good at your job, your technical job, is 2 completely different skill sets. And the third thing that I realize is that leaders often don't get their necessary training to become good leaders. So basically, it wasn't even her fault of this manager. She just didn't get the right training. She didn't know how to communicate or how to provide the right feedback and when. So this leads me to answering your question. I think a good leader is somebody that is a good communicator. The first thing is somebody that is transparent, build trust, that people know exactly what to expect and what is their vision, what is the expectations from them. And it's also somebody like, I think Kim Scott said it the perfect way in the Radical Candor, is that somebody that can provide direction but also show empathy and care about their direct reports. So it's kind of balancing the two. So for me, this is what a good leader is.
Okay, fantastic. And something you said that really resonated with me, and it was the fact that people tend to get promoted based on their performance in their current roles, not necessarily promotion to leadership because they're good leaders. And funnily enough, this was a conversation I was having with my partner in the car yesterday, where he is violently opposed to taking on a managerial role in the future because he knows and he believes strongly that he is not a good manager. He loves being an individual contributor. And one of the challenges he's facing in his life is he's really tenured and respected in his business. And there is and has continued to be pressure to step up and take on more responsibility. But rather than that responsibility be strategic, it's been focused on people development, which he not only doesn't particularly enjoy doing, but doesn't believe he's very good at either. So that leads me on to my next question, and he's probably going to dump me for sharing that. But obviously, there's a lot of myths and misconceptions surrounding what makes a good leader. But in your opinion, then, how can a business or senior teams actually evaluate effectively good leadership material? What does that look like in practice?
Yeah, and I think, by the way, about your partner is that it seems like he's very self-aware and he knows what he's good at and he knows what he doesn't want to do. So it's a good thing, it's a good thing that somebody says, you know what, this is not for me, because it's different than doing your job and being good at your job and leading people. So I think it's a good thing. And how companies can help leaders grow or help them understand if they can be good leaders or not. I think very often in many companies, especially in today, companies feel a lot of pressure to deliver. And for them, good leaders is people that lead teams that bring high results. That's it. A lot of companies, they're focused on the bottom line. If the team is performing well, if they meet their metrics or even exceed the metrics, that means it's a good leader. But in the real life, it's not necessarily the case, because bringing the results is important. The bottom line is definitely important for the company to survive and grow. But the employee well-being and satisfaction is also very important. And if they are happy, there's so many scientific studies that say that happy employees, motivated employees bring positive results. So they're going to be motivated to go above and beyond and do even more than they're supposed to do. So I think that companies can spot a good leader, whether looking at these metrics, employee satisfaction, leader satisfaction, run constant surveys. I really liked, both you and I worked at Amazon, and do you remember that we had every day we got a pulse survey, 2, 3 questions that would ask us questions about our leader, our engagement, satisfaction, and whatnot. And I think that it's a really good practice to constantly measure on a regular basis these things and not just wait for the pulse results every 6 months or every 12 months or looking at the bottom line. So this is one thing. And the second thing is there's other ways to spot good leaders through like 360 feedbacks and trainings. And for me, my personal way, the personal way that I can see is that I can kind of see if a good leader is a good leader or want to be a good leader is very often when I come, I identify the needs of the team. And one of the products that I propose is leadership coaching or leadership training. And leaders that say, I don't need training or I don't have time for this, but my team needs training, that means that maybe this leader actually does need some training and coaching from my experience. But if they say, yes, oh, I would love that, and they make time for it, they put it as a priority of learning, then I can see that this is somebody with a growth mindset, and they are already on the way to become a good leader.
Yeah, I agree with you in the most part. The one thing that really stands out to me on this subject is what comes to mind is that meme where it shows the difference between a leader and a manager. And I think when people use the word leader, they're often thinking of a manager, thinking of somebody with authority already. And I think, unfortunately, when it comes to leadership, we're talking about behaviors that don't rely on having that authority. We're talking about your ability to influence upwards and outwards and inspire other people to action without physically designating an order or having that natural control that comes from a job title, for example. So using like your example, Amazon, I was considered a leader. I was only a people manager towards the end of my tenure. And that was again, somewhat reluctant because I also like being an individual contributor. But that leadership skill came from the fact that I created programs that didn't exist, that I was able to influence people outside of my sphere of influence, like creating the well-being and mental health and well-being program, for example, or Amazon's Got Talent. These were things that I had to go and inspire other people to be a part of. I had to convince senior leadership to give me money to allow them to happen. And that wasn't something that was written in a job description. It wasn't something that could be taught to me. I could definitely observe other people being successful in those behaviors and try to adopt or replicate them. But it wasn't something that was condensed into a course or that anybody ever actually told me this is how you do this. So going back to that kind of feeling of leadership versus management, why do you think so many traditional leadership programs often fail to change real inherent behaviors?
Yeah, that's a good question. Why the traditional leadership trainings fail to change behaviors? There's a lot of reasons. First, maybe the programs aren't as good or aren't effective. The second thing is that it could be because there is no consistency, there's no continuation. Like very often we think, okay, we do a one-off offsite and that's it, it's going to solve our problems. But it's not. Learning has to be continuous and learning has to be accessible, and people want to continue learning throughout the week, the month, and enhance their skills. The third thing is that the best way we learn is on the job. So similarly to your experience is things that weren't taught to you, but you went and did it. You initiated a project, you thought you had the idea, and then you talked to different people, you got their buy-in, you convinced them. Maybe you learned something from them. Maybe somebody gave you some feedback, or somebody gave you an idea, or you got inspired somewhere, or you collaborated with someone. So these are the skills that are taught on the job. And actually, in the adult learning principle, we say that 70% of what we know, we learn on the job. So it's exactly what happened to you. And I think that maybe companies fail sometimes to provide these or on the job learning opportunities, or not even, I don't even want to put the responsibility, which is also a philosophical question. Whose responsibility is it? But it's also the responsibility of the employee, just like you did at Amazon in your role, and look where it got you, right? You achieved so much, is because not many people think about it. Not many people want to take this initiative. Some people are scared or not feeling confident. So, we need to empower ourselves and each other to take an initiative and learn on the job through these different opportunities.
Awesome. And that segues me so nicely to my next question. I mean, we've talked a lot about what is wrong, what doesn't work, but let's talk about what companies and individuals can do. For our audience that perhaps are trying to make change in their work environment, how can they design a work environment that reinforces leadership behaviors every single day?
I love that. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is culture, company culture that can create or break these leadership behaviors, and it's psychological safety. which is also very important. Psychological safety is the idea that employees can be brave, they can speak up, share their ideas and feedback without the fear of being judged or fear of negative consequences. So create this kind of environment where employees feel confident and brave to dare new ideas, and also create an environment where employees seek these new opportunities, growth opportunities where they can learn from. So I think this is really, really important. And culture is something that is mirrored by leadership. So leaders have to lead by example, show their vulnerability, not hesitate to say, okay, I tried this, I learned, I failed, I learned, I move on, I fix it, I continue. And demonstrating that, and employees would feel comfortable as well. It will trickle down to the individual contributor levels. So these three things. So in summary, the culture, psychological safety, and leadership, leading by example. I think these are three things that could enhance leadership behaviors in companies.
Okay. I mean, so I'm putting my consultant hat on and I'm thinking about the clients that I've worked with recently or in the last couple of years. And one of the continual kind of projects that seem to land at my door, and it's not a problem because I love them, but I've been basically redesigning performance management structures for companies. And when I go back and do an audit of what exists first, because obviously you can't create something until you know where they're coming from. And when I do that audit, what I tend to see, particularly in performance assessment kind of materials, is that they're very transactional in the way that they evaluate somebody's delivery and their performance. And so one of the things that I've really focused on when working with clients is not only incorporating that transactional element of their work and giving like KPIs and really measurable data driven analytics and ways to actually assess and measure, but also to build in assessment of things like influence, dealing with ambiguity, proactivity, and really stepping outside of just that blinkered path of what your job description says. Because to me, that's where the leadership comes through. And that's where somebody has the opportunity to hone their craft or to show what they're really capable of beyond just the blueprint of what their role entails. So I think to add on to everything you said, because I do agree with everything you said, but I also think you need to have that element where not only are you assessing all of the core job related things, but you're also providing that continual dialogue around the opportunity for people to be adding influence out of their immediate sphere and also holding them accountable to do that, really encouraging. So once you've got that safe space, giving that extra little push that not only can you do this and it's safe to do so, but actually you should be doing this. And this is what it looks like. And these are the rewards that come from adding that additional value that was not directly asked of you.
Yeah, but
Does that make sense?
it does. But for me, I think it's a great way to assess, people that wanna, like high potentials, people that wanna get to the next level. I think this is perfect model. But what about people that are just good at doing their job? Because we need those people too. Not everybody want to get promoted and want to grow. Some people just want to do their job. Maybe like similarly to what your partner said, I love doing my job. I'm good at it. I'm doing it. I don't want to become a people manager. There's people like that too, and they have to have space because I think, otherwise everybody would be promoted. Everybody would want to be promoted and grow and do this. But some people, they're doing their job, they're happy with it, and they don't want to do above and beyond and above the extent of it.
Playing devil's advocate, then, would you call somebody like that a leader? Because I wouldn't. Somebody who just delivers the transactional elements of their job, I wouldn't necessarily consider a leader. A leader to me is somebody who drives the business forward, who influences others around them. I mean, you can be a manager and you can train people and coach and develop people, but you're not necessarily a leader. Just
You're a leader of yourself.
All right. So when we're talking about leadership development, And let's preface, in this scenario, I am talking about the progression, the development into senior stages, or training your next generation of managers and leaders in the business. How do you think companies should be measuring the success of leadership development beyond like post-event surveys? I know what you're saying about the pulse surveys we had at Amazon, but they're one component. There's a lot more that can be done.
Yeah, of course. So you can look at, like, I think that's the most basic way, that post-training surveys that we have. It's like the most basic level, but you can also look at other levels, like seeing if there was a behavior change from before till like after, or 30, 60 days after they took the training or the learning experience, and seeing, measuring it through their own self-assessment, how they feel. For example, if they learned a skill, like let's say coaching, right? A leader coach their direct report. So how they feel about, I feel confident coaching my direct reports, or I feel confident providing constructive feedback. How did it change from before till after the training? And we can also look at different HR metrics as well, like retention, promotion, motivation, business results. Sometimes it directly impacts business results. If you look at leadership or teams that are field leaders or that are customer facing, so it's very easy to measure their scores. So you're looking at that. You can also look at 360 surveys and seeing how, not only they assess themselves, but also their team assesses them and their leadership assesses them, if they are actually better at providing feedback or better at coaching their teams, not only how they estimate themselves. And actually it's a very cultural thing, but not very often, but I see differences in the way leaders assess themselves versus how their teams and their stakeholders assess them. And it varies within cultures. In some cultures, they assess themselves better than others assess them. In some cultures, it's the other way around. Others assess them better than they themselves. So you have to look at kind of the ecosystem of the different metrics, the training results, but also knowledge change, behavior change, and the HR metrics. I think if you look at this kind of big picture, you will be able to see if the programs are effective or not. One last thing I want to add is that the leadership program shouldn't just fall off the sky, right? If you are creating, developing, and rolling out the learning experience, it should already target a specific metric that we want to improve, or a skill within the organization. So if you want to improve feedback or coaching or change, the way people build resilience, or stakeholder management, influence without authority. So the program should target that specific skill, and all the measurements in our big ecosystem should be around that specific skill we're building.
So how do you make sure that this kind of development is continual rather than a one and done training workshop? How do you build it into somebody's career journey or employee journey within a business?
Yes, I love that question. I think that there's multiple ways to make sure that it's continuous. So not only within the training, learning experience, that you come, you learn something, then maybe you have a reminder and you can do it e-learning, and you can listen to a podcast and kind of make it as a continuous journey. You also have to make it very, very accessible for people to access on their own time, and say, not only send to them, here's an email with a link of a training, but they should be able to access easily any type of learning or experience that they want, like listen to a podcast or a TED talk, or going to the learning management system and finding something there. And companies, we should, as learning and development professionals, we also need to make sure that they have those opportunities to learn on the job. So giving them something, some maybe project that is related directly to their job, and document it, or work in a group together and solve a business challenge and present this challenge to the senior leadership, for example, or exchange on a Slack group about how you're interactions went. Depending on what it is, we need to make sure that we enable not only the classroom training, but also on the job learning and learning from other people throughout people career, basically, and measuring it. And like you said, I like the idea of looking at those skills as part of their performance review or career development conversations. So seeing, okay, where we need to, we're targeting, let's say, problem solving skill. Let's see how we are. We did this training. Can you give me an example that you problem solved something? And let's talk about it. Or creating opportunities, working beyond your job and saying, okay, I'm going to connect with my colleagues and I'm going to help them solve their problem, somehow. So enabling this throughout the performance and career conversation is also very important.
Okay, awesome. And I can see we're coming up almost to time. So I'm going to ask you one very quick question finally. If you could burn down one part of the leadership development industry, what would it be and why?
Burn down? You mean like absolute?
Take a sledgehammer to it, annihilate it, make sure it stops happening right away.
Okay, it's e-learning courses that is 1 hour long, and there is a white man in a costume with a tie sitting and talking in front of the camera, and we have to listen to them for 1 hour. I burned this down.
Yes, I can 100% support that. As somebody with ADHD, I immediately go to the script. I'm like, can I just read the entire thing in one shot? I can't sit here and pay attention. I get that. For me, I've got to say, I think it's TikTok influencers without credibility. If I have to listen to one more 23-year-old talk about leadership development skills, and oh my goodness.
Yes. Yeah. My gosh.
Can we please do a better job of gatekeeping who the trainers are? Because I want to know that if I'm learning something from somebody, they're worth learning from, first of all.
Yes, and there's so many, and they have millions of followers. This is very scary.
But anyway, I'm so sorry. We're trying to keep these to 30 minutes so people can listen on their commute or their lunch break. But I really enjoyed having you on, Victoria. Anything you want to add before we switch off today?
Well, feel free to find me on LinkedIn. I'm Victoria Feldman, or I'm on Instagram, Career Coach Feldman. Feel free to add me, write me, comment on this podcast. Usually I do a good job of replying to everyone. So I'll be happy to hear if you have any feedback or questions, or you want to meet me and talk to me. I'm more than happy to do that.
Awesome. And yes, we'll be sharing all your contact details in the promo materials and the end slide as well. So worry not, people will know how to reach you.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you again. And for everybody listening, really hope you found it useful, and join us next time for another amazing HR leader talking all about the things that we need to burn down and change. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.